The date is August 12th, 2023. The first Pokemon World Championships of the Generation 9 era of games is underway, and to everybody's shock, the Pokemon Company decided to make the World Championships a brand new format that nobody had any real opportunity to practice for. The previous tournament, the North American International Championships, was in the Regulation C format, which had the likes of Tinglu, Fluttermane, Chien-Pao, and Iron Hands as the definitive top-tier Pokemon. This was effectively as powerful as the Generation 9 Pokédex could be without introducing broken Pokemon from previous generations. Adding Pokemon like Urshifu, Tornadus, Landorus, Ursaluna, and Rillaboom would just completely change the metagame and force people to practice for the World Championships without any official events to even play in. Guess what they added just before the World Championships?
Wicked Blow follow-up, and it's gonna go ahead and just hit right into the Amoonguss.
This is the Pokemon you want in those Trick Room turns. Ursaluna joins the field in
Oh,
like Rock
it's just
Slide,
weak
but
wind.
the Bleak Wind.
Oh my goodness.
That does over half to the Amoonguss.
So, the World Championships are underway, and the top tiers of the format have shifted quite a bit. No longer were players forced to use Talonflame for speed control, because Tornadus was the top dog in that department, along with its brand new move, Bleakwind Storm. Heatran was back and it was spamming heat waves left and right to deal with the newly added Rillaboom, who dominated matches with its incredible grass-type damage output, which was necessary as Ursaluna, a powerful ground normal type, was introduced with the ability Guts, allowing it to one-shot several key metagame Pokemon with its move Facade. So with all these incredible Pokemon, what is a 3-time regional champion doing using a Pokemon so far down the tier list in top 16 of the World Championships? Emilio Forbes made one of the most incredible meta callouts in the history of the game. For his 2023 World Championships team, going into an event with no prior official events of the same format, he locked in the team of Fluttermane, Urshifu Rapid Strike, Goldengo, Tornadus, Chi-Yu, and Brambleghast. A Pokemon that, up until this point, was widely considered a gimmick above all else. You see, Brambleghast is a ghost grass-type Pokemon with mediocre stats and the signature ability of Wind Rider. Wind Rider causes Brambleghast to get an attack boost whenever Tailwind is active on its side of the field. But not only does this give it an attack boost whenever Brambleghast is hit with a wind-based move, but it even makes Brambleghast immune to those wind-based attacks, meaning that Brambleghast was suddenly uniquely equipped to deal with this influx of new top-tier Pokemon. As it was completely immune to almost anything Tornadus was capable of, it was immune to and powered up by Heatran's Heat Wave, it resisted most of Rillaboom's attacks, and it was immune to Ursaluna's Facade, all while having the ability to dish out massive damage from a Wind Rider boosted Terra Ghost Poltergeist. Using this Pokemon, Emilio Forbes managed to claw his way through the World Championships and into Top Cut, where he was a favorite to win the whole event, until disaster struck. A tournament-wide disconnect struck the event. While Emilio was up a game and was likely to win the match he was playing in against Maddie Morgan, the board state was one which the official rules would not consider enough of a lead on Emilio's part to award him the win. Due to this, the set would be decided via sudden death, a match where the player who picks up the first KO will win the game. Emilio would go on to lose a Pokemon first in this sudden death match and be eliminated from the World Championships in this unfortunate manner, despite being a favorite to win the event. This left the competitive Pokemon community with a massive what if on their minds. What if Emilio won that set? Would he win the whole event? And would Brambleghast of all Pokemon be a world champion today? Unfortunately, this question would live in people's heads for the foreseeable future. Obviously, as a competitive Pokemon channel, I've been playing tons of Pokemon Champions lately, and with the mobile version of the game out, my device of choice has been the Red Magic Astra 2 gaming tablet, which Red Magic was kind enough to send me for this ad. And this thing is a beast. I'm able to play Pokemon Champions, Call of Duty Mobile, and all my other games without any dropped frames and in beautiful high quality, thanks to the Snapdragon 8 Elite chip inside of this device, which is complemented by the 185Hz refresh rate display. And after super long gaming sessions, I don't have to worry about performance drops, thanks to the Red Magic Astra Elite 2 gaming tablet's liquid cooling system, which I'm going to turn the lights down low so you can all appreciate just how awesome this looks. Not only does it look great, but it's functional too. It keeps the device running cool and well. This device will connect to Bluetooth controllers and keyboards, meaning that it's been effective for not only gaming, but I've even used it to write this entire video. It's been a nice portable solution for my work that's even smaller than a laptop. And while it is small enough to take with me anywhere, it's also big enough to see my games in great quality, while being the right size for my hands so I can comfortably game with touch controls. Red Magic has a simple motto: win more games. And with this device, I've been having an easier time than ever doing just this. But not only am I winning more games, but I'm writing more videos and getting more work done. So whether you're gaming, working, or browsing the web, I can't recommend the Red Magic Astra 2 gaming tablet enough. It launches late August 2026, but you can purchase early bird vouchers mid-August to help secure one-day early access, as well as $30 off your order. These are going to sell out quick, so be sure to get them soon. And be sure to use my link in the description to pick yours up. Thank you again to Red Magic for sponsoring this video. We all know the Karen quote: strong Pokemon, weak Pokemon, that is only the selfish perception of people. Truly skilled trainers should try to win with their favorites. If only the game developers knew the type of player they would create with this seemingly inconsequential line of dialogue. The quote is commenting on Silver's perception of his Pokemon throughout the story of the game and framing him as flawed within his logic. It's not trying to make a prescriptive claim about using metagame strategies in a competitive match. Besides that, I'm not really sure if we should be taking advice from somebody with 5 Pokemon on their team. What, Karen, you don't have a 6th favorite Pokemon, so you just went with nothing? Okay, sure. Despite my issues with the culture this line of dialogue has created, Karen does bring up an interesting question. Is there such a thing as a weak Pokemon? Let's consider Emilio Forbes' World Championships team. While it did consist of 5 of the strongest Pokemon in the game, it did have one Pokemon that was widely considered to not be viable in Brambleghast. And despite its supposed inviability, it took a mass disconnect to eliminate Emilio from the event when he was actively using Brambleghast in multiple matchups. This is because Brambleghast was uniquely equipped to beat several top-tier Pokemon, patching up problematic matchups for the team. We'll refer to this method of using bad Pokemon as a meta counter, where the Pokemon that's seeing niche usage is able to beat problematic Pokemon that are common within the metagame. In Emilio Forbes' case, you could argue that the greatest value that Brambleghast brought to the team was its ability to take on the common lead of Tornadus and Urshifu Rapid Strike. You see, in this metagame, and several metagames to follow, Urshifu Rapid Strike and Tornadus would lead off games to threaten easy KOs with the combination of Tornadus' Rain Dance, Tailwind, and Bleak Wind Storm, with Urshifu's Surging Strikes, which would always crit and would be boosted in rain. This duo of Pokemon is more than capable of threatening one-shots on effectively every Pokemon on Emilio's team, if it weren't for the existence of Brambleghast, which not only hard walls Tornadus, but can survive a rain-boosted Surging Strikes from Urshifu and one-shot it back with Power Whip, especially when paired with its own partner Tornadus to completely stuff the opponent's lead. If you're wondering just how common of a threat Tornadus and Urshifu are, out of the top 16 teams in the event, 13 of the teams had an Urshifu, and of those teams, 3 had Tornadus on the team, and the ones that didn't had another wind-based speed control user next to it, such as Icy Wind Fluttermane, Tailwind Hurricane Pelipper, and Hurricane Zapdos. All of which are Pokemon that Focus Sash Brambleghast has the tools to deal with in one way or another. Urshifu with some kind of wind-based speed control partner was so omnipresent in this metagame that it made up a majority of the teams in Day 2 of the event, as it was just a winning strategy. So making the call to run a niche Pokemon that at best beats and at worst throws a massive wrench in the plans of these teams was an inspired decision by Emilio, to say the least. But Brambleghast has even more situations where it can be useful. We already noted its pause the matchup into Icy Wind Fluttermane, but there's far more Pokemon it can deal with that were common in this tournament. Heat Wave from Chi-Yu and Heatran was a move that Brambleghast could easily switch in on for a free boost. Rillaboom almost never had a move to hit Brambleghast with. Amoonguss can't redirect attacks from Brambleghast, and it can't even hit it for any real damage. And even Iron Hands could find itself lacking the tools to deal with Brambleghast at times. The point is, it was the perfect storm for this niche Pokemon to finally see use, and only one person in that entire tournament was able to figure that out. It's due to these unforeseeable metagame conditions that it's really hard to make a claim that any one Pokemon will always be, quote, bad. Because at some point in the future, things might just shape up to be the right conditions for that Pokemon to make a splash in a big way. But being a hard counter to the metagame isn't the only way to make a case for bad Pokemon secretly being strong. Sometimes a weak Pokemon can make strong Pokemon even stronger. August 20th, 2022. Just under a year prior to Emilio Forbes' run with Brambleghast, Tatsuya Watanaki would make a splash with yet another low-tier Pokemon, but one which players had previously thought wasn't even worth running as a gimmick. Golisopod was a Pokemon that, despite its incredible stats and typing, was betrayed by a single design decision: its ability Emergency Exit. This ability causes Golisopod to forcibly switch out as soon as its health drops to 50% or lower. This means that despite its access to solid support tools like Wide Guard, strong priority moves like Sucker Punch and First Impression, and access to setup moves like Swords Dance, it has never even been remotely close to being considered tournament viable. If not for this ability, Golisopod would have solid matchups into several top-tier legendary Pokemon, including Groudon, Kyogre, Zacian, and both Calyrex forms. It just has this massive drawback looming over its head, preventing it from ever seeing its full potential in competitive play. In many cases, it doesn't even get to attack before having to switch out due to its ability. Hypothetically, the reward for running this Pokemon is pretty high, but the risk is far too much to ever justify it. Nobody would dare bring this Pokemon to a serious tournament if they intended to win. So what is Tatsuya Watanaki doing all the way up in top 32 at the World Championships with Golisopod? Well, let's circle back to those legendary Pokemon that Golisopod should be able to beat. Calyrex Ice, Calyrex Shadow, Zacian, oh, there we are, Groudon, and Kyogre.
Dealing massive amounts of damage in their Dynamax form, but like Game 2, it will be that Groudon.
So as long as Groudon can connect, that would be able to take it down from the Calyrex. This is so incredibly close!
The Kyogre, it can go for a huge attack, and Megan is going to bring this into a game number 3.
Groudon and Kyogre are an interesting duo of Pokemon. Within lore, they're always fighting for weather dominance over the world, and this of course translates to the exact same thing happening in competitive play, with each of them wrestling for their respective weathers to go up and allow them the edge in a match against each other. However, while they are commonly pitted against each other, something that's often overlooked is the many times that they work together in teams. Dual Primals is an archetype which had great success in 2016 when these two had their primal forms and permanent weather, and despite them losing their primal forms in Generation 8, the duo could still work well together. With Groudon being able to dish out incredible physical damage while soaking up physical attacks, and Kyogre doing the exact same on the special side of things. Kyogre may not love facing against Zacian, but Groudon doesn't mind it, and Groudon doesn't love facing against Calyrex Shadow, but Kyogre can make quick work of it. The only issue is when they face opposing weather Pokemon. In order to maintain the correct weather up, dual primal players will have to do a lot of switching. A lot of switching. Interesting. Tatsuya took what was Golisopod's greatest weakness and flipped it to his advantage. Not only was Golisopod able to leverage its attacks to threaten several metagame Pokemon, but if it were forced to switch, it would be to Tatsuya's benefit. With a team of Groudon, Kyogre, Incineroar, Tornadus, Raikou, and Golisopod, Tatsuya assembled a revolving door of Pokemon that ensured that he'd always be able to not only switch out his Groudon or Kyogre to try to get his weather back up, but he'd be able to switch them back in immediately as long as Incineroar or Raikou used a pivoting move like Parting Shot or Volt Switch, and even when Golisopod gets knocked down to half health. Tatsuya's Golisopod had 2 priority moves in First Impression and Sucker Punch, allowing it to almost always throw out an attack for solid damage into the opponent before being forced to switch. And upon switching, several things could happen. Kyogre or Groudon could hit the field to get their weather up, granted they switched out on that same turn. Incineroar could come back in to threaten Fake Out or Intimidate, or Tornadus can come in and be ready to set up Tailwind for a partner Pokemon if it was the right time. Tatsuya found a way to use Golisopod at the absolute highest level of competitive play, by having it enable his stronger Pokemon to do their jobs even better. We'll refer to this method of using bad Pokemon as a meta enabler, as rather than explicitly beating several Pokemon in the format to patch a team weakness, Golisopod serves to make Kyogre and Groudon even easier to use. It sort of greases the wheels. Tatsuya was on a roll leading into top 32. He was just a few games away from winning it all. Tatsuya even cleanly beat his top 32 opponent in Game 1, then in Game 2 ran it back to easily... Oh. Yeah. In all the excitement of winning the match 2-0, Tatsuya accidentally lifted his switch out of the dock slightly, cutting the connection and losing him the match, as it was clearly his fault that the connection ended. This forced them to play a Game 3, and in that Game 3, he lost the match and was subsequently eliminated in the most unfortunate manner we'd ever see in competitive Pokemon, at least up until next year. It's kind of nuts, right? We had 2 anti-meta players lose off a disconnect in day 2 of the World Championships 2 years in a row. That's just crazy. It's pretty unfortunate that we have these what-ifs that we have to live with, right? But there's something that we can learn here. Where Pokemon like Brambleghast can find viability by outright beating metagame threats, other Pokemon like Golisopod can find viability by enabling metagame threats. And they're not alone in these categories. I mean, Shedinja was used to beat legendaries over the years due to the fact it was outright immune to basically every legendary Pokemon except for a few, and it could be used as a win condition after the likes of Kyogre and Xerneas removed problem Pokemon from the opponent's team like Incineroar and Yveltal. The very existence of Shedinja on teams sort of buffs Kyogre and Xerneas, and Ditto is similarly only ever used in formats with legendary Pokemon due to the fact that these formats finally give Ditto something worth copying and beating. If Ditto switches in against a boosted Xerneas, it copies those stats and can reverse sweep. Same with Zacian. It's really hard to write off any one Pokemon since metagames can shift in just the right way to make something magically a top tier threat. However, there is a third way that a bad Pokemon can suddenly be good. Rather than beating the meta or enabling it, sometimes the game just, well, chooses its favorites. Those generational gimmicks like Dynamax and Terrassalization can really mess with individual Pokemon depending on some small mechanic interactions. Take for example Durant, who I bet most of you didn't know is a regional champion. The Dynamax gimmick caused Pokemon to double their HP and turn their moves into superpowered generic moves with secondary effects. The move that they used depended on the type of move it was based off of. These moves were incapable of missing, which was quite the buff for Durant due to its ability Hustle. Hustle causes the user to have its attack stat increased by 50%, at the expense of the attacks being 80% their normal accuracy. You can imagine just how incredible this ability is when suddenly not only Durant is throwing out 140 base power attacks left and right, but those moves straight up can't miss. It especially helped that Durant was among the faster Pokemon in the metagame at the time, with it outrunning Togekiss, Charizard, and Excadrill, all while having moves that can one-shot each one of them. Suddenly, Durant doesn't seem too bad, and that's why it came out on top at the 2020 Collinsville Regional Championships, where Andrew Ding took on Wolf Glick in finals to secure Durant its first major victory. And if we want to look at an even more recent example of mechanical biases, we can take a look at Articuno in Generation 9. Yeah, Articuno, the definitive worst of the 3 Kanto birds, mostly due to its massive rock-type weakness on top of the usual downfalls of the ice-type. Articuno actually isn't capable of dealing any significant damage due to its middling 95 special attack stat, but it does have some pretty solid bulk, though that bulk is betrayed by its awful defensive typing. Well, Terrassalization kinda kills 2 birds with 1 stone, or rather 2 stones with 1 bird if you use Articuno well. Terrassalization causes Pokemon to change their type to whatever type the user decides to give them in the team building process. If that Pokemon terrassalizes into a type that it already had, it loses its other typing and gains a massive 2x power multiplier on moves of that type. At the 2024 Utrecht special event, Nikhil Reddy decided to see if terrassalization could save Articuno. Nikhil gave his Articuno the moveset of Blizzard, Freeze Dry, Sheer Cold, and Ice Beam with the Choice Specs item to boost the power of its special attacks. He also gave it the ability Snow Cloak and Terra Ice. By using Terra Ice, Articuno would massively boost the power of its Ice-type attacks, which in this case was all of its attacks, and this, along with the Choice Specs, meant that Articuno was capable of dealing ridiculous damage with its spread Terra Ice Blizzard. Articuno also became shockingly bulky due to it losing all of its flying-type weaknesses. It even got a defense boost in Snow from partner Alolan Ninetales. And on top of all of this, Snow Cloak causes Articuno to have a chance to dodge any attack as long as Snow is active. It was with this strategy that Nikhil Reddy went on to dominate the event and give Articuno a massive victory that led to a small Articuno epidemic online, as not only was this Articuno strategy novel and effective, but it was also just really, really funny. Okay, so we've established the various ways that a low tier can suddenly ascend to godhood in competitive Pokemon. We've made several cases for Pokemon over the years that became incredible picks for major events. So taking into account all this information, we need to finally answer the question, what is a bad Pokemon? Well, from a casual perspective, there are no bad Pokemon, because all of them can beat the game. But in a situation where you're facing real people, things aren't so simple. A bad Pokemon has to have no use in competitive play. It effectively has to be future-proofed to always be unusable. It can't ever be capable of beating multiple top tiers, it can't be capable of enabling multiple top tiers, and it can't ever have a mechanic magically make it uniquely strong amongst the other Pokemon. I'm gonna tell you guys a little secret. This Pokemon doesn't exist. Let me give you a hypothetical situation. Let's take the worst fully evolved Pokemon we can think of and create a situation where it could be useful. This is Unknown. It's a Pokemon that would unironically be more effective as a belt buckle than a battler. Not only are all of its stats awful, but it only knows one move, and that move no longer exists in modern games. Hidden Power. This is a 60 base power special attack whose type depends on the Pokemon's IVs. Now, let's fast forward to Generation 20. Game Freak has suddenly added a new legendary Pokemon that will permanently turn into one of the opponent's Pokemon, only with all of the stats doubled. Basically, Super Ditto. No matter what Pokemon this thing copies, the opponent will get tons of value from Super Ditto. It's so good that almost every team runs one, but you have an ace up your sleeve. The opponent goes for Super Transform and you send out your secret weapon. Go, Unknown. Congratulations, their Super Ditto is now a belt buckle. But you still have your Super Ditto and you can copy whatever you want. There we go, we made a fake situation where Unknown suddenly has a niche in competitive Pokemon. Now, this is obviously ridiculous, but so is whatever Dondozo and Tatsugiri are doing, and that's a meta duo now. If you told somebody in Generation 8 that there's a piece of sushi that drives a catfish like a mech and doubles its stats in the next generation, they'd accuse you of lying. Basically, anything is possible as long as the developers of Pokemon are willing to go through with it. So, basically any Pokemon can hypothetically be viable in one way or another at some point in the future. But this doesn't mean that there's actually no such thing as a bad Pokemon, because there is one thing that makes a Pokemon truly bad. The true viability death sentence of a Pokemon is a lack of unique traits. If two Pokemon are too similar in their roles, abilities, and stats, but one is clearly just a direct upgrade to the other Pokemon has no reason to exist, because whatever possible fantasy situation where it would magically be viable would also be the case for the Pokemon with the better stats. This only truly applies to a few Pokemon, but I'd argue the most clear example of this is Vivillon versus Butterfree. There's effectively no real reason to ever run Butterfree over Vivillon. Butterfree's best ability, Compound Eyes, is also the best ability on Vivillon. The standard moveset Butterfree runs of Rage Powder, Pollen Puff, and Tailwind can be run by Vivillon. Only Vivillon is the only one of the two that has access to the move Hurricane. Vivillon is even faster and hits harder than Butterfree. Their best item is even the same, with both of them almost always running the Focus Sash more often than anything else. Truly, there's nothing that Butterfree can do that's better than Vivillon. This concept applies similarly to other Pokemon, just to a lesser extent. Whiscash is just a worse Gastrodon, since Gastrodon is bulkier, has better moves, hits harder, and has the ability Storm Drain. Whiscash may have access to Dragon Dance though, which is a small little niche, just one that won't ever really be in high demand. Seviper is similar to Arbok, only Arbok is bulkier, has Intimidate, and has better moves. It's for these reasons that Pokemon like Butterfree, Vivillon, and Seviper are unlikely to ever see any competitive success. They're always going to be competing with the other low tiers and somehow be even worse than them. Only this problem can also technically be solved. You see, not every Pokemon exists in every game anymore. We called it Dexit back in the day, but some games now exclude certain Pokemon, meaning that there's a reality where we get a game with Butterfree but not Vivillon, suddenly making Butterfree the default best choice. So with that in mind, what even is a bad Pokemon? What is a weak Pokemon? Well, it's a Pokemon that just isn't unique. And Game Freak knows this. They've known it for years. This is why the past 3 generations, we've had insane abilities added to the game, like Araquanid's Water Bubble, Morpeko's Hunger Switch, and whatever Dondozo and Tatsugiri are doing over there. The Pokemon each generation are just getting more and more unique properties in their abilities that make them stand out amongst the competition. No Pokemon other than Garganacl is immune to statuses and gets to resist ghost type attacks despite just being a pure rock type. That is a completely unique Pokemon. There's more thought going into Pokemon designs every generation to ensure that they all have something going for them, and that no two Pokemon are so similar that one will never get used over the other. It's uniqueness that leads to Pokemon like Emilio's Brambleghast, Tatsuya's Golisopod, and Nikhil's Articuno randomly being viable given the right conditions. So, what is a bad Pokemon? It's Wormadam, the grass one. Thanks for watching. Yeah, that was a fun video. I wanted to just talk about this concept. I don't know. This is a fun little video that I just felt like making. I wanted to talk about just bad Pokemon. It seems like whenever you try to approach the topic of like what Pokemon are truly bad, there's always someone who comes up with like an example of like, well, actually I won with Beedrill once because of this. And like, yeah, that's fine. You know, it's cool and all, but I don't know, like, I think that there's like a deeper conversation that can be had about like the designs of Pokemon and, you know, how they just keep getting weirder and weirder throughout the generations. And I think that's just because Game Freak recognizes that, you know, you kind of have to make them unique if you want to ever see them in competitive play. I don't know what they're doing with Spidops, but technically that thing has an exclusive move. Anyways, thank you to all my subscribers for watching the video. If you guys enjoyed, leave a like, do that. Thank you so much to everyone whose name is on screen right now. I really appreciate you guys' support. Of course, thank you to Avatar67, Club, Casey Horner, and Sada Al Thani for your generous pledges. You guys mean the world to me. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. Yeah, you guys can join my Discord, get access to tournaments, get access to teams that I make if you support the channel by becoming a YouTube channel member or a Patreon, or even just subscribe to me on Twitch. Thank you so much for watching, and see you guys in the next video. Bye.